Well, I'm Betty Cords, and I have been a member here for 45 years. I'll never forget the day that I first got acquainted with this place. There used to be a group in town called the Fine Arts Incorporated, and they were in charge of the community theater, musical events, and art type projects. And every May, they had a big event on Hickory Street, right between 2nd and Broad. And I always thought this black pavement was not very, friendly, user-friendly for an event like this. And so in 1968, I became the general chairman, and I suggested using the grounds here at Hubbard House because at that time we still had that beautiful green lawn on the south side. And so I talked to the committee about this, and they seemed to think that would be a good idea. So I came over here to talk to Shirley Broden, who was the director at that time. And she was all for it. She said, we really don't get that. A lot of the people that live here in town have never been inside the place. This would get some of those people in here. And so I said, fine, that'd be fine. So we set it up for the end of May. It's 1968. And we had some musical groups that were going to play out there on the grounds. The city brought in their portable band shell, and we were going to have ice cream social going on outside, and some artists that were demonstrating how the type of artwork that they did. And then there was going to be an area for children in the back, close to where the YWCA was, and the events going on in the annex over there, along with a photography show going on in the lower level of the Episcopal Church, and another high school art show going on at St. John's Catholic School. And so we thought, we were all looking forward to this. I woke up that morning and the rain was coming down in buckets. And it continued all day long. I couldn't believe it. I thought, oh God, the day was literally going to be washed up. So what they did then is they moved all the music entertainment down into the lower level of the Episcopal Church, and then the ice cream social went over there at St. John's. And surprisingly, there were really quite a few people with umbrellas going up and down the streets all day. Not as many people probably as we had in mind, but it wasn't too bad. Well then, it must have been probably November, December, Shirley Broden called me again and said, we need somebody on the board from Lake Crystal, which is where we lived at that time. And I was just wondering if you would be interested. Well, I was pretty dumb about all of that kind of thing at that time. So I said, well, okay, that'd be fine. So I came to the meeting, and apparently they only had meetings twice a year at that time, once in January and then again about June or so. And at that time, Howard Williams was president. And so then, of course, I became a member. And it wasn't too far away then from where we were planning a centennial celebration for Hubbard House. And so Catherine Hansen and I and Marcia Schuster were on the committee. There may have been others, but I can't remember if there were or not, but I remember that there were the three of us. And we'd get together trying to figure out what to do. We thought something every month from probably about May until maybe October. And so we came up with a plan, again using that lovely green lawn back there. And it had this lovely little creek that ran through there too. And so we had the city bring down their band shell, and we had, I think, 4 different musical things that went on one time during the afternoon. And then we had ice cream social, and I remember there was a 2nd grade group of kids that came down there with their teacher and did some dancing and things like that. And then we had a style show, a period style show. again in that band shell. I think it sat here almost all summer long. And so then it got to be about a year or so later, we were getting a lot of calls for people that were interested in genealogy, and we really weren't set up for that kind of thing here. And so the board decided to clear out the room that is now the master bedroom downstairs here, and have that be the research area. At that time, it was just full of displays of all kinds of small things in these tabletop type display cases, along with a couple of large display cases along the end wall. And so it was my job to clear all this stuff out of there. Well, the people that were here, the director and the other people that worked here, took care of all of the small things that were in the cases, but it was my job to get the cases out of here. Well, there was no place to put them because the carriage house was full of all of the vehicles that they could get in there when they had the flood out in Sibley Park, and they had to move them from the building out there into the carriage house. And so, and then it was also like 3 years later that the floor collapsed in that building, so that whatever vehicles we had wound up in a pile on the bottom of the building. And so there really was no place for those cases to be. So they said, well, okay, just take them apart and get them out of there. So I came with a bunch of tools and took them apart, and we got them out of there and started putting it together. Well, the one thing that we thought we should do is through the years, they had saved all of these old newspapers, and there was a built-in cupboard in one of the maid's rooms upstairs that they had made this big cabinet where they kept all those newspapers, and there was no way you could move it. And so it would have to be moved and rebuilt down here if we were going to move it here. And so the problem was to get somebody to do it. So I called on the vocational school thinking that maybe they had some E or Beaver students that might do this for credits, and we did. And so that's what they did. They brought them down and put them all against that back wall where the bed is now. And we got all the newspapers and everything down there. And then it was a matter of getting some filing cabinets and things like that, and I think they hired Ruth Ann Engstrom is the one then that actually put all of the things together that went into the filing cabinets. And when I think of what we had at that time compared to what is available now, there's just no comparison. I don't think most people realize what we have up there, you know, for research. And so anyway, then about a year later, the director here left suddenly, and the board was, you know, they didn't know what to do, so they asked me whether I would be interested in being interim director for a short time. And so I thought, well, I suppose I could. They figured that as long as I had been down here all that time trying to get the research area put together, I was down here and knew what was going on. Well, I also knew what wasn't going on. And so I thought, well, okay, I think I can do that. Well, famous last words. Then that fall, the fire department came in here and went through the building and informed me that if we were going to have school tours in the basement area, we had to have 2 more exits. One here in the front of the house, and they suggested that closet here in the hall, and also one in the back going out to the street. Well, there already was a door there, and I think you probably would have wound up in just kind of a little cage-like place, but you could have gotten out of there, but not very easily, because it was, well, it would have been 1 story high practically, and it would have been hard for anybody to get out of there, so it had to be more accessible. And I remember when the guy came to put that stairway in, as he took out what was there, he discovered that there already was a stair tread up in the joist. So apparently that had been the stairway down to the basement in the old days before they did the remodeling. So it was an interesting, interesting fall, because then I went down to the park department to see how much money we had to spend, because nobody seemed to know how much the city gave us every year. And when I got down there, the man down there gave me a hard time, because there had been 13,000 is what the city gave us every year, along with things like the toilet paper and the lighting and, you know, all of those kinds of cleaning type stuff. And so he said the $13,000 from the year before had not been used, so it was turned back to the city. And this year, that $13,000 was going to be turned back by the middle of November, and here we are, you know, right after Labor Day. And I was trying to figure out, you know, how to use this money and where to use it, kind of a thing. And so it was decided then that we would also put on some storm windows on the big bay windows, because there wasn't any, and there was a lot of cold air coming in. And also to put some kind of a clear covering, like a plastic sheet across the colored part of the window on the top, all of that beautiful, whatever you call it. And so we did. And then, like right about Christmas time, the ceiling came down in Mrs. Hubbard's room. And so we had to get a plasterer here. Well, all of these contractors came during the Christmas, New Year's time, because nobody else wanted them in their house at that time. So this whole place was turmoil for about 2 months. And so we had to close it to the public. But it was like World War II in here. It was just everything all over the place. So I thought, as long as we're doing this, why don't we spruce up the office area? Looked pretty shabby. The floor needed finishing badly. It didn't have any varnish left on it. And there was peeling down wallpaper in the corners and things like that. And I thought, this is where the public comes to first, you know. It should look decent. And so we got Manderfells donated the wall covering, and also a loose type carpet that was on the floor so it would look nice. And so then, as the plasterer was getting about done upstairs, I thought the kitchen ceiling has some bad cracks in it, and I thought that looked like it could come down anytime too. So there was enough money there that they could do the kitchen. And so they replastered that whole kitchen and put a new liner actually into the chimney. And they stripped there was mint green paint all over the walls and all the woodwork in the butler's pantry and into the kitchen. All that was stripped, and all of the woodwork then in the kitchen was regrained like it would have been. And there were modern cabinets that were down at the end, which were taken out. And, well, actually, the plumber, Mr. Stubbe, was someone I got to know very well over here, because he'd been here a number of times. And I asked him if by any chance he knew where I could find an old sink and some of those fixtures that go with it. And he said, oh, sure, I've got a pile of that stuff in my shed, you know. And so he brought them over and installed them. And of course, I could go on, but I just wanted to say that through the years, it's just amazing what's all been done here with the Historical Society. This beautiful restoration of the house, and then the putting together that whole facility up there on the hill, the Heritage Center, is lovely. I don't think there's another one like it anywhere close by. So I'm happy to be a member here.